Tales of Veldrith, written and produced by Matty Taylor. Prologue. 1. The Storm. The sky was an iron-grey bruise above them, and the waves crashed like beasts against the longboat's hull, drenching the Vikings with icy salt water. The wind shrieked and tore at their beards and cloaks, and even the strongest among them were forced to grip the gunwales with white-knuckled hands to stay steady. They had seen storms before, but this one was different. Darker, colder, like a malevolent spirit sweeping across the ocean. Thorvald Eriksson, standing at the stern, shouted commands to his crew, but his words were snatched away by the wind. His blue cloak billowed like a torn sail, and he fought to keep his footing as the longboat pitched and rolled. The oarsmen struggled against the storm's fury, but the sea fought back with relentless force, pulling them off course, its waves rising as tall as mountains. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terrified faces of the men. Thorstein, a stout warrior with arms as thick as oak branches, was clutching his amulet of Thor's hammer, muttering prayers to the gods. Beside him, Bjorn the bear, a fierce young warrior with a wild mane of hair, gripped his oar so tightly his knuckles turned white.
"Odin's eye is upon us,"
he bellowed, but his voice was swallowed by another rumble of thunder. The rain began to fall, sharp and stinging like needles, soaking their woolen cloaks and chilling them to the bone. The boat lurched violently to one side, and a wave crashed over them, sweeping a few men off their seats and into the chaos at the bottom of the vessel. Thorvald managed to hold his ground, but he felt his heart race as he watched one of the younger oarsmen slip, nearly going overboard before another man grabbed his arm and pulled him back.
"Hold steady,"
Thorvald roared.
"The storm won't break us if we don't let it."
The Vikings clung to their faith in the gods, their faces set in grim determination. They were not strangers to hardship, and they knew storms were often tests of strength and resolve. Yet the relentless force of the tempest bore down on them, and it seemed as if the very spirits of the sea had risen against them. One wave surged taller than any before it, casting its shadow over the boat like a hand poised to crush it. Thorvald saw it coming, his eyes widening as he braced himself. The wave crashed down, knocking him to his knees and sweeping a shield and an axe into the frothing sea. A few of the men let out cries of terror, their voices swallowed by the roar of the ocean. As the boat bucked and twisted, Thorvald caught sight of the distant shoreline, a dark line barely visible on the horizon. Vinland, the land they had set out to find. They were close, but the storm was determined to deny them their destination. The sight of land, however distant, rekindled a spark of hope in Thorvald's chest, and he gritted his teeth, roaring to his men,
"Row, you sons of Odin! The gods will see us through."
His words were like fire, and the Vikings surged with a last reserve of strength. Oars cut through the water, battling the waves with every ounce of power they could muster. They rowed not just for themselves, but for their brothers, for the legacy they hoped to carve into the unknown lands ahead, and for the glory of those who had come before them. The storm's fury did not abate, but with each stroke they inched closer to Vinland, defying the storm's wrath. They knew that even if they fell, their names would echo in the halls of Valhalla, a song sung by their kin for generations. They were Vikings, and no storm would shatter their will. And so, inch by inch, they clawed through the storm, their eyes fixed on the distant shore, braving the fury of the sea until the land of Vinland loomed nearer and nearer, an elusive promise on the horizon, but one they would fight for, through storm and shadow till their dying breath. Prologue 2. A Rider on the Storm. The man who called himself Vestina strode through the storm-tossed clearing, his crimson skin gleaming like a war banner drenched in blood. His horns, spiralling upward like the dark branches of a cursed tree, glistened with rainwater, giving him the aspect of a demon from the old sagas. Yet his bearing was no wild, frenzied thing. He moved with the precision and grace of one who had seen more lifetimes than any mortal dared dream. Standing a full 6 feet tall, his presence was undeniable. The storm winds tugged at his black hair, which fell to his shoulders in unruly waves, as though it carried the tempest's spirit within it. His eyes, coal dark with an ember's faint glow, spoke of an intelligence honed over centuries, tempered by suffering and sharpened by the cruelty of time. He wore no armour, only a long coat of dark leather reinforced with plates of some unknown metal, etched with strange sigils that hummed faintly with power. Across his back was strapped a blade unlike any other, a weapon forged not by dwarves or men, but by arts both arcane and forbidden. The hilt seemed to pulse in rhythm with the beating of his heart, and its dark steel caught the flashes of lightning as though hungrily devouring the light. Vestinus bore the unmistakable look of an elf in his sharp angular features, but time and the twisted magics that had reshaped him had carved away at their softness. His face was a battlefield of contrasts. His high cheekbones and proud jawline were the inheritance of a people known for their beauty, but his crimson complexion and the faint scars that crossed his brow spoke of a soul who had long since abandoned peace. To the common folk he was a figure of terror, a Caduce, one of the fallen, whose origins were whispered about in fearful tones. Yet there was no malice in his gaze, only a weariness that seemed to weigh heavier than the storm clouds overhead. As he paused at the edge of the Viking encampment, his boots sinking slightly into the waterlogged earth, he drew back the edge of his cloak, revealing hands that were clawed at the tips, though they handled the haft of his staff with a craftsman's precision. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and steady, carrying the weight of centuries, yet laced with something akin to regret.
"Your storm is fierce,"
he said, his words cutting through the din of the tempest.
"but I have weathered worse."
And indeed it seemed that he had, for though the storm raged and the wind howled, Vestinus stood unmoved, as if he were part of the earth itself, a crimson sentinel whose resolve no force, mortal or divine, could break. Book 1, The Sentinel. Prologue, The First Victim. The night was unnaturally still, the kind of silence that pressed down on the soul like an omen. In Jorvik, a city that never truly slept, even the restless breeze seemed to have fled. The moon, full and pale, cast its cold light over the cobbled streets, but its glow barely touched the narrow alleyways where shadows thrived. It was in one such alley that Halvar Sigurdsson drew his final breath. The merchant had been walking home late from the docks, his mind preoccupied with the day's dealings. He had prospered in recent months, striking lucrative trade agreements with both Norse and indigenous artisans. But tonight there was no trace of triumph in his expression, only fear. His heavy boots echoed on the stones, each step a frantic beat against the silence. He stopped suddenly, clutching the amulet of Thor that hung from his neck. Something moved in the shadows ahead, too swift to be natural. He called out, his voice trembling.
"Who's there? Show yourself."
The darkness answered with silence. Halvar turned, his instincts urging him to flee, but the way behind him was no longer clear. Figures emerged from the gloom, draped in black robes that seemed to drink in the moonlight. Their faces were hidden behind masks carved to resemble skulls, each one more grotesque than the last. In their hands they carried curved blades, the edges gleaming with a sickly green light.
"Please."
Halvar stammered, his voice barely a whisper.
"I've done nothing."
The figures moved as one, their blades flashing in the moonlight. Halvar's scream was brief, cut off as quickly as it began. When it was over, the robed figures dragged his lifeless body into the center of the alley. One of them knelt beside him, drawing a ritual knife from within their robes. With precise movements, they carved symbols into Halvar's flesh, the markings glowing faintly as they worked. Another figure began to chant in a guttural, ancient tongue, the words reverberating unnaturally in the still air. Above them, the moon seemed to dim, its light fading as if recoiling from the ritual below. When the work was done, the cultists melted back into the shadows, leaving Halvar's body sprawled on the blood-slicked stones. The glow of the carvings lingered for a moment longer, before fading into darkness. The next morning, the city awoke to chaos. Word of the murder spread like wildfire, drawing a crowd to the narrow alley where Halvar's body still lay. The sight was enough to silence even the most hardened of warriors. His pale skin was marred with strange arcane markings, each one precise and deliberate, as though crafted by a master artisan. His eyes, wide and unseeing, seemed to stare into a void that no living soul could comprehend. Among the crowd stood Ragnar Arvidsson, captain of the city watch. His broad shoulders and weathered face carried the weight of decades of service, but even he looked shaken as he surveyed the scene. He turned to the figure standing beside him, a man who stood apart from the others not by his stature, but by his very presence. Crimson-skinned, horned and cloaked in dark leathers, Vestinus was impossible to mistake for an ordinary man. Though his features bore the angular elegance of an elf, the fiery hue of his skin marked him as something far more ancient and far more feared.
"What do you make of this Vestinus?"
Ragnar asked, his voice low. Vestinus knelt beside the body, his sharp-clawed fingers tracing the edges of the symbols carved into Halvar's flesh. His black hair fell forward, obscuring his expression, but his voice when he spoke was grim.
This is no ordinary murder,
He said.
The markings, they are not of this world.
Ragnar frowned.
Magic, then?
Vestinus straightened, his dark eyes fixed on the captain.
Magic and something darker. These symbols are a summoning, a message to the dead.
The crowd murmured in growing unease, and Ragnar cursed under his breath.
A death cult, then? In Jorvik?
Vestinus nodded slowly, his expression unreadable.
Not just any cult. These markings belong to the heralds of Arawn. If they have returned...
His voice trailed off, but the weight of his unfinished thought hung heavy in the air. Ragnar placed a hand on Vestinus's shoulder.
You've faced them before, haven't you?
Vestinus hesitated before replying.
Long ago. And if they are here now, we have little time to stop them. They won't stop with one victim. This is only the beginning.
The two men stood in silence as the sun climbed higher, casting its light over the grisly scene. Vestinus's gaze lingered on the body, his mind racing through fragments of memories he had hoped to bury. The markings, the ritual, the faint, sickly glow. It all pointed to a storm brewing beneath the surface of Jorvik, one that threatened to engulf the city in darkness. Vestinus turned to Ragnar, his voice firm.
We must act quickly. The heralds of Arawn are not merely killers. They are harbingers. And if they are not stopped, they will unleash a force far beyond our control.
Ragnar nodded grimly, and the two men began to plan their next steps, unaware that in the shadows of the city, the cult was already preparing for the Night of the Veil. Chapter 1. A Reluctant Investigator. The smell of death clung to the air like a shroud. Vestinus stood in the narrow alley, his crimson skin a stark contrast to the grey stone walls around him. The early morning light filtered weakly through the buildings, casting long shadows across the cobblestones slick with blood. He had seen death in many forms, but this was no ordinary killing. The markings carved into the merchant's body were deliberate, precise, and laced with intent that felt older than the city of Jorvik itself. Kneeling beside the body, Vestinus traced one of the symbols lightly with a clawed fingertip, careful not to disturb the scene. The faint remnants of arcane energy made his skin prickle, a subtle warning of the power woven into the markings. Ragnar Arvidsson, captain of the city watch, stood nearby, arms crossed over his broad chest, his expression grim.
Well?
Ragnar asked, breaking the silence.
What do those markings tell you?
They tell me that this wasn't a crime of passion.
Vestinus replied, his voice low and measured.
This was ritualistic. These symbols
He gestured to the spiralling lines and jagged runes carved into the corpse.
are part of a summoning rite.
Ragnar frowned, his weathered face tightening.
Summoning? Of what?
Of something we don't want walking these streets.
Vestinus said. He rose to his full height, brushing the blood from his fingers on a cloth.
The markings are part of a death ritual. It's designed to tether the soul of the victim to something unnatural.
Ragnar grunted, his unease plain.
I've seen a lot in my time. Vest in us. But I've never seen anything like this. Why here? Why now?
That's the question, isn't it?
Vestinus turned, scanning the alley for clues. His dark eyes lingered on a trail of blood leading toward a stack of crates. He walked over, his boots crunching on the frost-touched cobblestones, and found a symbol daubed in blood on the wall behind the crates. It matched the carvings on the body, a jagged spiral encircled by sharp lines.
This
Vestinus said, gesturing to the symbol.
is a mark of the heralds of Arawn, a death cult that hasn't been seen in centuries.
What happened when you dealt with them before?
Vestinus spoke, his voice heavy.
Long ago, in another life, they were attempting something similar, using rituals to blur the lines between life and death. They failed, but not before leaving a trail of devastation in their wake.
Ragnar cursed under his breath, and
And now they're back.
Or someone inspired by them.
Vestinus said.
But this ritual isn't complete. They'll need more than one death to achieve their goals. This is only the beginning.
The captain's hand moved to the hilt of his sword, his grip tightening.
Then we don't have time to waste. Where do we start?
Vestinus hesitated. He had spent decades trying to distance himself from the darkness of his past, to live quietly as a scholar and healer. But the sight of the body, the feel of the symbols, stirred something in him. A grim sense of duty he could not ignore.
We start with the markings.
Vestinus said.
I'll need access to my library. These symbols, they're old, but not all of them are familiar. If I can identify the language and its purpose, we'll have a better idea of what they're trying to summon.
Ragnar nodded.
And the body?
Have your men move it discreetly to the apothecary. I'll examine it further there.
The captain gave a curt order to his guards, who moved in to carefully wrap the body. As they worked, Ragnar turned back to Vestinus, lowering his voice.
If what you're saying is true, this city could be in more danger than anyone realizes.
It is.
Vestinus replied.
The heralds of Aurorn are not just murderers. They're harbingers. If we don't stop them, Jorvik will fall, and it won't be to an army or a plague. It will be to death itself.
Ragnar nodded grimly, his expression hardening.
Then let's get to work.
Later that morning, Vestinus returned to his modest home, a low wooden structure tucked away on the edge of the city. The front room doubled as an apothecary, its shelves lined with jars of herbs, vials of glowing liquids, and dusty tomes. He pulled one of the thicker books from a shelf, its leather cover worn and embossed with faded runes, and set it on the work table. As he worked, poring over symbols and cross-referencing texts, a soft knock came at the door. Vestinus looked up, frowning. Few dared to approach him uninvited, and Ragnar wasn't one for pleasantries.
Come in,
He called. The door creaked open and a young girl stepped inside. Her clothes were patched and muddy, her hair tangled, and her wide eyes darted nervously around the room before settling on Vestinus.
You're the red man, aren't you?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly.
The one who knows about magic?
Vestinus's brow furrowed.
Who are you?
Kaya,
She said, clutching the edge of her cloak tightly.
my sister. She's gone. Taken by men in masks.
Vestinus stood slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing.
Tell me everything.
Kaya's story tumbled out in broken fragments. A late-night ambush, robed figures dragging her sister into the shadows, and the faint, haunting glow of symbols painted on the walls. The mention of the symbols made Vestinus's blood run cold.
Do you know where they took her?
He asked. Kaya nodded hesitantly.
There's an old building near the docks, abandoned for years. I saw them go inside.
Vestinus glanced at the tome on his table, its pages still open to a diagram of the same symbol carved into the merchant's body. The pieces were falling into place, faster than he had expected.
Wait here.
He told Kaya, striding to the corner where his weapons were stored. He retrieved his blade, its dark steel catching the light, and strapped it to his side.
What are you going to do?
Kaya asked, her voice trembling. Vestinus looked back at her, his expression grim.
I'm going to find your sister. And if the heralds of Aurorn are behind this, I'm going to stop them before it's too late.
Chapter 2. The Missing Girl. The docks of Jorvik were a labyrinth of sagging warehouses, crumbling stone quays, and narrow alleys that reeked of brine and decay. By day, the area bustled with traders unloading goods from ships that came from as far as the southern coasts of the Crown. Colonies. But at night, it was a haven for thieves and shadowy dealings. Tonight, it was quieter than usual, and the silence unsettled Vestinus. Kaya led the way with surprising confidence for someone so young. She darted through the shadows, her small frame moving quickly between piles of crates and stacks of rotting barrels. Vestinus followed closely, his crimson skin and horns hidden beneath a dark cloak. Even so, his presence was impossible to fully conceal. The very air seemed heavier where he walked.
There.
Kaya whispered, pointing to a building near the edge of the water. Its roof sagged in the middle, and the windows were boarded up, but a faint light flickered from within, leaking through cracks in the wood.
That's where they took her.
Vestinus nodded, placing a hand on Kaya's shoulder.
Stay here. If anything happens, run. Do you understand?
Her wide eyes met his, fear and defiance battling within them.
But
No arguments.
He said, his tone firm but not unkind.
I'll get your sister back. Stay out of sight.
Kaya hesitated, but eventually crouched behind a stack of crates. Vestinus turned his attention to the building. He approached silently, his boots making no sound on the damp ground. His hand hovered over the hilt of his sword, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. He reached the door and pressed his ear against the warped wood. Muffled voices reached him, their tone low and chanting. The heralds of Arawn. The words of the ritual were unmistakable, even if their meaning was shrouded in mystery. Vestinus took a deep breath, then pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The interior smelled of damp wood and mildew, but beneath it was a metallic tang. Blood. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, revealing a wide room lit by an array of flickering candles. The source of the chanting was clear. A group of robed figures stood in a circle, their voices rising and falling in unison. At the centre of the circle was a young woman, bound and gagged, lying on the floor. Kaya's sister. The girl's eyes were wide with terror, and her struggles against the ropes only seemed to amuse the cultists. One of them, a tall figure with a bone-white mask that resembled a bird's skull, stepped forward, holding a curved dagger etched with glowing runes. He raised the blade above his head, and the chanting grew louder. Vestinus acted without hesitation. He drew his blade in one fluid motion, the dark steel gleaming faintly as it caught the candlelight. A muttered incantation escaped his lips, and the sigils on the weapon flared to life with an eerie, crimson glow. The cultists turned at the sound, their chanting faltering, as Vestinus stepped into the light. His hood fell back, revealing his scarlet skin and curling horns. For a moment, there was silence as the cultists stared, their surprise giving way to a mixture of fear and anger. One of them hissed,
Caducci.
Vestinus said nothing. He lunged forward, his blade slicing through the air. The first cultist barely had time to raise his arms before the sword cut through him, the magic etched into the blade, tearing apart flesh and spirit alike. The others reacted quickly, drawing their own weapons, jagged daggers and curved swords, but they were no match for Vestinus's speed and precision. 2 more fell before they could even get close, their bodies crumpling to the ground. The remaining cultists spread out, attempting to surround him. Vestinus muttered another incantation, and a burst of crimson energy exploded from his blade, sending 2 of them crashing into the walls. The leader, the one with the bird-like mask, barked an order.
Hold him. The ritual must not be interrupted.
3 cultists charged at once, their weapons flashing in the candlelight. Vestinus parried the first strike, his blade moving like a living thing, then sidestepped the second attacker. The third managed to land a glancing blow, the dagger scraping against his shoulder, but Vestinus barely flinched. He spun, his sword cutting through 2 cultists in a single, fluid arc. The leader snarled and turned toward the girl, raising the dagger again. Vestinus saw the movement and stretched out his free hand. A tendril of arcane energy lashed out from his palm, striking the leader and knocking him backward. The dagger fell from his grasp, clattering to the floor. Vestinus crossed the room in 3 quick strides, his sword levelled at the leader's throat before he could rise. The remaining cultists froze, their fear now palpable.
Tell me what you're trying to summon,
Vestinus growled, his voice low and dangerous.
or I'll make sure you never speak again.
The leader laughed, a harsh, broken sound.
You cannot stop us, Fallen. Arawn's avatar will rise, and death will claim this land. You are too late.
Vestinus's blade pressed harder against the man's throat.
Where are the others? Where is the next ritual site?
The leader said nothing, his masked face tilting slightly as though mocking him. Vestinus frowned, sensing a pulse of magic in the air. Before he could react, the man whispered a single word in the guttural language of the ritual, and his body erupted into flame, consuming him in an instant. The other cultists screamed and fled, disappearing into the shadows before Vestinus could stop them. Cursing under his breath, Vestinus turned to the girl. He cut her bindings with a swift motion and helped her to her feet.
You're safe now.
He said, his voice softer. Kaya burst through the door a moment later, her face pale with fear. When she saw her sister alive, she ran to her, wrapping her arms around her tightly. Vestinus sheathed his blade, his expression grim.
They'll be back,
He said.
This was only the beginning.
Kaya looked up at him, her voice shaking. But
What do we do now?
Vestinus glanced toward the door where the faint glow of dawn was beginning to creep in.
Now we find out where they're planning to strike next. And we stop them, no matter the cost.
Chapter 3. The Hidden Map. The morning sun cast a muted glow over Jorvik, struggling to penetrate the thick clouds that hung low over the city. Vestinus, Kaya, and her sister Alva sat in the apothecary's back room. The faint scent of herbs mingled with the metallic tang of blood that lingered on Vestinus's cloak. Alva, shaken but unharmed, held a cup of warm tea in trembling hands as Kaya sat protectively beside her. Vestinus stood at his work table, studying the ritual dagger he had retrieved from the scene. The blade was etched with runes that pulsed faintly, their meaning just out of reach. Despite his centuries of study, some ancient symbols still eluded him.
They wanted to kill her.
Kaya said, breaking the heavy silence.
Why? What are they doing?
Vestinus didn't answer immediately. He placed the dagger on the table and turned to face them.
The ritual they were performing wasn't just about her. It's part of something larger, something designed to awaken a power tied to death itself.
Kaya's brow furrowed.
You mean this Aron they were talking about?
Yes.
Vestinus said.
Aron is an ancient being, one tied to death and the passage of souls. The heralds of Aron believe they can summon an avatar of his power to this world. If they succeed...
He trailed off, his expression grim. Kaya shuddered.
But why my sister?
Vestinus gestured toward Alva, who looked up from her cup, her face pale.
Because of her connection to the ley lines beneath Jorvik. You said your family has lived here for generations.
Alva nodded hesitantly.
Yes, our grandmother always said our ancestors were tied to the land. She called it a gift, but I never really understood.
It's no coincidence.
Vestinus said.
The cult is targeting people with deep ties to the ley lines, people whose lifeblood resonates with the magic of the earth. They're trying to use that resonance to fuel their rituals.
Kaya's eyes narrowed.
So they'll come after more people like her?
Exactly.
Vestinus said.
And we need to find out where they'll strike next.
Later that day, Vestinus returned to the warehouse at the docks, Kaya trailing close behind despite his protests. The building was still and silent, but the air inside felt heavy, as if the remnants of the ritual lingered. The robed bodies of the cultists Vestinus had killed were gone, but faint bloodstains and scattered ritual tools remained. Vestinus knelt near the spot where the ritual circle had been, examining the ground carefully. The faint outline of the symbols still glowed, visible only to those trained in the arcane arts. He traced them with his clawed fingers, muttering under his breath.
These runes,
he said.
They're coordinates.
Coordinates?
Kaya echoed. She crouched beside him, her brows furrowing.
You mean like a map?
Not a physical map.
Vestinus replied.
These runes are tied to the ley lines. They mark places of power, the sites the cult needs for their rituals.
He followed the trail of runes across the floor, stopping near a broken crate. Tucked beneath the debris was a rolled-up piece of parchment, stained and crumpled. Vestinus carefully unrolled it, revealing a map of Jorvik and the surrounding areas. Several locations were marked with the same spiral symbol he had seen on the body of the merchant.
This is it,
Vestinus said, his voice grim.
their plan.
Kaya peered over his shoulder.
What are those marks? The next ritual sites?
Vestinus nodded.
Each of these locations corresponds to a point where the ley lines intersect. They'll need to perform rituals at all of them to complete their summoning.
He traced his finger across the map, stopping at one of the marks near the city's edge.
This one is next. It's close, and they'll need to move quickly to keep their momentum.
Kaya frowned.
It's an old temple, isn't it? People say it's haunted.
Haunted or not, the cult will be there.
Vestinus said, rolling the map up and slipping it into his cloak.
We have no time to waste.
As night fell, Vestinus and Kaya approached the old temple. The structure was overgrown with vines and half collapsed, its once proud stone walls now crumbling into ruin. The faint sound of chanting reached them as they drew closer. The same guttural tones Vestinus had heard at the warehouse. Vestinus turned to Kaya, his expression stern.
Stay here. This time, I mean it.
Kaya opened her mouth to argue, but stopped when she saw the seriousness in his eyes. Reluctantly, she nodded and crouched behind a cluster of rocks. Vestinus braced himself. The fight had only just begun. Chapter 4. The Forgotten City. The ancient temple loomed ahead, its crumbling facade bathed in the cold light of the rising moon. Vestinus approached with caution, his senses attuned to the faint vibrations of dark magic emanating from within. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, mingling with the distant murmur of chanting voices. He paused at the entrance, a grand archway now overgrown with ivy and moss. The stone beneath his fingers was cold and rough, etched with faded runes that spoke of a time when this place was revered. Now, it served a darker purpose. Drawing his cloak tighter around his crimson form, Vestinus stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit by flickering torches, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with ancient carvings. The chanting grew louder, resonating through the vast chamber and sending a chill down his spine. He moved silently, his boots making no sound on the worn stone floor. As he rounded a corner, the source of the chanting came into view. A group of robed figures stood in a circle around an altar, their faces hidden beneath the hoods. On the altar lay a young woman bound and gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Vestinus's heart tightened at the sight. He recognized the symbols painted on the floor around the altar, ancient runes associated with death and summoning. The heralds of Arawn were preparing for another ritual. He scanned the room, noting the positions of the cultists and the exits. There were too many to confront directly without endangering the girl. He needed a plan. But as he stepped closer, the leader sensed him and stopped chanting. He turned toward Vestinus, his masked face tilting slightly.
"Ah,"
the man said, his voice smooth and mocking.
"the Fallen. I was wondering when you'd come."
Vestinus said nothing, his grip tightening on his sword. The leader laughed softly.
"You think you can stop us? You, whose very existence is proof of the power we seek to reclaim."
The only thing your rituals will bring is death,
Vestinus said, his voice cold.
and I intend to stop you before that happens.
The leader raised a hand and the cultists turned. The air crackled with energy as the leader began to chant again, his voice weaving power into the very fabric of the room. As he considered his options, a movement caught his eye. From the shadows emerged a figure clad in dark leather armor, moving with the grace of a predator. A hood concealed their features, but the glint of steel in their hand was unmistakable. Vestinus tensed, ready to act, but the figure moved past him without a glance, their focus on the cultists. In a swift, fluid motion, they leaped into the circle, blade flashing. The chanting ceased abruptly as the first cultist fell, blood spraying across the altar. Chaos erupted. The cultists scrambled, some drawing weapons, others attempting to complete the ritual. Vestinus seized the opportunity, drawing his own blade and charging forward. He engaged the nearest cultist, their swords clashing with a metallic ring. Vestinus parried a strike aimed at his head and countered with a swift slash across the cultist's chest. The man crumpled to the ground, clutching the wound. Beside him, the mysterious figure fought with lethal efficiency, dispatching cultists with precise strikes. Together, they cut through the ranks, their movements a deadly dance of steel and shadow. As the last cultist fell, Vestinus turned to the altar. The girl lay motionless, her breathing shallow. He sheathed his sword and approached, untying her bonds with gentle hands.
You're safe now.
He murmured, helping her to sit up. She looked at him with wide, fearful eyes, but nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. The figure in leather approached, pulling back their hood to reveal a woman with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. A scar ran down the left side of her face, disappearing beneath her collar.
"You're Vestinus,"
she said, her voice low and steady. It was not a question. He nodded, studying her.
And you are?
"Ira Thorsdottir,"
she replied.
"I've been tracking these cultists for weeks. Seems our paths have crossed."
Vestinus inclined his head.
Your assistance is appreciated, but this is far from over.
Ira glanced at the girl, then back at Vestinus.
"Agreed. We should get her to safety and regroup. There's much to discuss."
Vestinus helped the girl to her feet, supporting her as they made their way out of the temple. Ira walked beside them, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. As they stepped into the cool night air, Vestinus couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The heralds of Arawn were growing bolder, their rituals more frequent, and now, with Ira's unexpected arrival, the stakes had been raised. He glanced at her, noting the determination in her gaze, an uneasy alliance perhaps, but a necessary one. For the darkness looming over Jorvik was unlike any they had faced before, and together they would have to confront it, Chapter 5. The Unveiling. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Jorvik as Vestinus and Ira made their way through the city's winding streets. Their destination was the grand hall at the city's centre, where the Council of Elders convened. The hall's towering wooden doors loomed ahead, adorned with intricate carvings depicting the city's storied past. As they approached, Vestinus glanced at Ira.
Are you certain about this? Revealing the cult's infiltration could incite panic.
Ira's blue eyes met his, unwavering.
The people deserve to know the truth. Only then can we unite against this threat.
Vestinus nodded, pushing open the heavy doors. Inside, the hall buzzed with conversation. Council members and citizens alike filled the space, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. At the room's centre stood a raised platform, where the council elders presided. As Vestinus and Ira stepped forward, the murmurs quieted. Elder Hrothgar, a stout man with a braided grey beard, raised a hand.
Vestinus, Ira. You've requested to address the council. What news do you bring?
Ira stepped onto the platform, her voice clear and strong.
Honoured elders, citizens of Jorvik, we stand before you to reveal a grave threat within our midst. The heralds of Arawn, a death cult, have infiltrated our city, performing dark rituals to summon an ancient power.
A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Vestinus joined Ira, holding up the map they had recovered.
This map marks the locations of their rituals. They target sites where the ley lines converge, places of power within Jorvik.
Elder Hrothgar's brow furrowed.
And what do they seek to achieve with these rituals?
Vestinus's expression was grim.
They aim to summon an avatar of Arawn, the ancient god of death. If they succeed, it could bring devastation upon us all.
A murmur of fear spread through the hall. Elder Ingrid, a tall woman with piercing green eyes, stood.
What evidence do you have of this infiltration?
Ira gestured to the back of the hall.
Bring them in.
The doors opened and 2 guards escorted a man and a woman into the hall, their hands bound. The prisoners' faces were pale, their eyes downcast.
These individuals were caught attempting to abduct a young girl for their ritual.
Ira explained.
Under questioning, they confessed to being members of the Heralds of Arawn.
Elder Hrothgar's gaze hardened.
Is this true?
The man looked up, defiance in his eyes.
We serve a higher purpose. The old ways will return, and death will cleanse this world.
A gasp echoed through the hall. Elder Ingrid turned to Vestinus.
What do you propose we do?
Vestinus took a deep breath.
We must identify and root out all members of this cult. Strengthen our defences at the marked sites and protect those with ties to the ley lines. Unity is our best defence against this darkness.
Elder Hrothgar nodded.
Agreed. We will mobilize the city guard and call upon our allies. Jorvik will not fall to this threat.
As the council members began organising their response, Vestinus felt a hand on his arm. He turned to see Kaya, her eyes wide with determination.
I want to help,
She said.
My sister and I, we owe you our lives. Let us fight alongside you.
Vestinus smiled softly.
Your courage is commendable, Kaya, but this battle will be perilous.
Kaya lifted her chin.
We understand the risks, but we can't stand by while our city is in danger.
Ira approached, nodding in agreement.
Every hand is needed. We can train them, prepare them for what's to come.
Vestinus considered for a moment before nodding.
Very well. But you must follow our guidance and be prepared for the challenges ahead.
Kaya's face lit up with determination.
We won't let you down.
As the hall buzzed with activity, Vestinus felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but with allies by his side, he believed they could stand against the encroaching darkness. Together, they would fight to protect Jorvik from the shadows that sought to consume it. Chapter 6. The Gathering Storm. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Jorvik as the city's defences were hastily fortified. Vestinus and Ira stood atop the city walls, observing the preparations below. The air was thick with tension, the weight of impending conflict pressing down on the inhabitants.
The council has mobilized the city guard.
Ira noted, her sharp eyes scanning the bustling streets.
But will it be enough?
Vestinus sighed, his crimson skin catching the last rays of daylight.
The heralds of Arawn are cunning and relentless. We must anticipate their moves and strike before they can complete their rituals.
A messenger approached, breathless.
Master Vestinus, Lady Ira, we've received reports of unusual activity near the old temple ruins to the east. Villagers have spotted robed figures gathering at dusk.
Ira's jaw tightened.
It must be another ritual site. We can't let them proceed.
Vestinus nodded.
Assemble a team. We move at once.
Under the cover of night, Vestinus, Ira, and a small contingent of city guards approached the ancient temple ruins. The structure stood silent and foreboding, its once grand pillars now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Faint chanting echoed from within, sending a chill down their spines.
Remember,
Vestinus whispered,
our goal is to disrupt the ritual and capture any cultists for interrogation. No unnecessary risks.
The group nodded, weapons at the ready. They advanced cautiously, the moonlight casting eerie patterns through the broken roof. As they entered the main chamber, they were met with a disturbing sight. A circle of robed figures surrounded an altar upon which lay a young woman, bound and unconscious. The cultists chanted in a guttural language, their voices rising in intensity. At the head of the altar stood a figure in a mask resembling a stag's skull, holding a ceremonial dagger aloft.
Now,
Vestinus commanded. The guard surged forward, weapons clashing with the cultists. Ira moved with lethal grace, her blades finding their marks with precision. Vestinus focused on the masked leader, their eyes locking across the chaos.
You cannot stop the inevitable.
The leader hissed, his voice echoing unnaturally.
Arawn's return is at hand.
Vestinus advanced, his sword glowing with arcane energy.
not while I still draw breath.
Their blades met with a resounding clash, sparks flying. The leader moved with unnatural speed, his strikes fueled by dark magic. But Vestinus countered with centuries of experience, his movements fluid and precise. As their duel intensified, the ritual circle began to glow ominously. The air crackled with energy, and a low hum resonated through the chamber. Vestinus realized with horror that the ritual was nearing completion, despite their intervention.
Ira!
He shouted over the din.
The circle! Disrupt it!
Ira nodded, breaking away from her fight and sprinting toward the glowing symbols etched into the floor. With swift, deliberate movements, she began to scuff and erase the markings, her actions causing the glow to flicker and wane. The leader snarled, sensing the ritual's disruption. He unleashed a wave of dark energy, forcing Vestinus back.
You meddle in forces beyond your comprehension.
Vestinus steadied himself, his eyes blazing.
And you underestimate the strength of those who fight for the living.
With a surge of power, Vestinus channeled his energy into his blade, striking the leader with a decisive blow. The cultist staggered, dark energy dissipating as he collapsed to the ground. The remaining cultists, seeing their leader fall and the ritual disrupted, fled into the night. The chamber fell silent, save for the laboured breathing of the guards and the crackling of extinguished energy. Ira approached Vestinus, wiping blood from her blade.
We stopped them this time, but they'll regroup.
Vestinus nodded, his expression resolute.
Then we'll be ready. Jorvik will not fall to the shadows.
As dawn approached, they escorted the rescued woman back to the city, the weight of their task heavy upon their shoulders. The battle was far from over, but they had won a crucial victory, and with each step, their resolve to protect their home from the encroaching darkness grew stronger. Chapter 7. The Hidden Path. The first light of dawn bathed Jorvik in a soft glow as Vestinus and Ira returned to the city, the rescued woman supported between them. The streets were quiet, the usual morning bustle subdued by the weight of recent events. At the city's infirmary, they entrusted the woman to the care of the healers.
Ensure she receives the best care.
Vestinus instructed, his voice tinged with concern.
She has endured much.
The head healer, a matronly figure with kind eyes, nodded.
We will do all we can. Thank you for bringing her back.
As they stepped back into the street, I returned to Vestinus.
We need to find their main hideout. Disrupting their rituals isn't enough. We must cut off the head of the serpent.
Vestinus nodded in agreement.
Agreed. But we need more information. The cultists we've encountered so far are mere pawns. We need someone higher up.
Ira's eyes narrowed thoughtfully.
There is someone who might help. An informant in the city's underbelly. He has his ear to the ground and owes me a favour.
Lead the way.
Vestinus replied. The sun had fully risen by the time they reached the outskirts of Jorvik, where the city's veneer of respectability gave way to narrow alleys and shadowed corners. Ira led them to a modest tavern, its sign creaking in the morning breeze. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of stale ale and smoke. A few patrons lingered, nursing their drinks despite the early hour. Ira approached the barkeep, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek.
We're here to see Rurik,
she said quietly. The barkeep eyed them suspiciously before nodding toward a door at the back.
He's in his usual spot.
They made their way to a dimly lit room where a man sat at a table, shuffling a deck of worn cards. He looked up as they entered, a sly smile spreading across his face.
Ira Thor's daughter.
He drawled.
To what do I owe the pleasure?
We need information, Rurik.
Ira replied, taking a seat across from him.
About the heralds of Aron.
Rurik's smile faded, replaced by a wary expression.
Dangerous folk to be inquiring about. What's it worth to you?
Ira leaned forward, her gaze steely.
Your continued well-being, for one. And perhaps a favour returned.
Rurik chuckled nervously.
Fair enough. What do you want to know?
Vestinus spoke up.
We need to find their main hideout. Where are they operating from?
Rurik glanced around, ensuring no one was eavesdropping.
There's been talk of activity near the old catacombs beneath the city, places long forgotten, where the dead were once laid to rest. If the cult is hiding somewhere, it'd be there.
Ira nodded.
Thank you, Rurik. You've been helpful.
As they stood to leave, Rurik called after them.
Be careful down there. The catacombs are treacherous, and the cultists won't take kindly to intruders.
Outside, Vestinus and Ira exchanged a determined glance.
The catacombs.
Vestinus mused.
It makes sense. A place tied to death, hidden from prying eyes.
We should prepare,
Ira said.
Gather supplies and inform the council. This won't be easy.
Vestinus agreed.
We'll need a small, skilled team. Stealth will be our ally.
As they made their way back to the heart of Jorvik, the weight of their mission settled upon them. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they were resolute. To protect their city from the encroaching darkness, they would venture into the depths where few dared to tread. Chapter 8. Descent into Darkness. The entrance to the catacombs lay hidden beneath the ruins of an ancient chapel on Jorvik's outskirts. Vestinus, Ira, and a select group of seasoned warriors stood before the weathered stone steps leading into the earth. Each carried a torch, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the walls.
Remember,
Vestinus instructed, his voice low but firm.
Our primary objective is to locate the cult's main chamber and gather intelligence. Engage only if necessary.
The team nodded in unison, their expressions resolute. With a final glance at the fading daylight, they descended into the depths. The air grew cooler and more oppressive as they ventured deeper. The narrow passageways twisted and turned, the walls adorned with ancient carvings and niches where the dead once rested. The silence was palpable, broken only by the soft echoes of their footsteps. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast chamber, the ceiling arched high above, supported by pillars etched with symbols of death and rebirth. At the chamber's centre stood an altar, draped in dark cloth and surrounded by candles whose flames burned with an unnatural hue.
This must be it,
Ira whispered, her eyes scanning the room. Vestinus nodded, stepping forward cautiously. As they approached the altar, a voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with malice.
So, the interlopers have finally arrived.
From the shadows emerged a figure clad in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. He moved with a predatory grace, his presence exuding an aura of menace.
Kale.
Vestinus murmured, recognizing the cult's enigmatic leader. Kale's lips curled into a sinister smile.
You are persistent, Vestinus, but your efforts are in vain. The heralds of Iran cannot be stopped.
Ira stepped forward, her hand on the hilt of her blade.
We've disrupted your rituals before. We'll do it again.
Kyle chuckled softly.
But this time, you are too late. The summoning is nearly complete. Soon, Iran's avatar will walk this realm, and death will cleanse the world.
Vestinus tightened his grip on his weapon.
We won't let that happen.
With a swift motion, Kyle raised his hands, dark energy swirling around him. The chamber trembled as shadows coalesced into monstrous forms, their eyes glowing with malevolence.
Face the wrath of the heralds,
Kyle declared, his voice echoing with unholy power. The team braced themselves as the shadowy creatures lunged forward. Blades clashed, and the air filled with the sounds of battle. Ira moved with lethal precision, her strikes cutting through the darkness. Vestinus channeled his arcane abilities, unleashing bursts of energy that illuminated the chamber. Amidst the chaos, Kyle advanced toward the altar, chanting in an ancient tongue. The symbols on the altar began to glow, pulsating with a sinister light.
He's completing the ritual.
Ira shouted, parrying a blow from one of the shadow creatures. Vestinus's eyes narrowed.
We have to stop him now.
Summoning his strength, Vestinus surged forward, breaking through the fray. He reached the altar just as Kyle raised a dagger, poised to make the final sacrifice.
No!
Vestinus roared, thrusting his blade toward Kyle. Kyle turned, a look of surprise flashing across his face. The blade pierced his side, and he staggered back, the dark energy around him dissipating. The shadow creatures faltered, their forms wavering before dissolving into nothingness. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive aura lifting. Kyle clutched his wound, glaring at Vestinus with burning hatred.
This is not the end,
He spat.
Iran's will cannot be denied.
With a final defiant gaze, Kale collapsed, his body lifeless at the foot of the altar. Ira approached, breathing heavily.
Is it over?
Vestinus nodded, though his expression remained grim.
For now. But the cult's influence runs deep. We must remain vigilant.
As they made their way back through the catacombs, the weight of their victory mingled with the knowledge that the battle against the darkness was far from over. But for the moment, Jorvik was safe, and the dawn of a new day awaited. Short story, The Founding of Jorvik. The longships had been hauled ashore, their dragon-headed prows glinting in the weak sunlight, as though watching over the rugged coastline. The Vikings set to work without delay, their axes ringing out against the trunks of towering pines, the steady rhythm echoing across the clearing. Smoke rose from newly dug fire pits, curling into the crisp air, mingling with the salty tang of the sea. Their spirits were high, but the land felt strange, wild, untamed, and full of secrets. Thorvald Eriksson, son of Eric the Red and brother to Leif Eriksson, stood at the centre of the clearing, his broad shoulders draped in a cloak of wolf fur. His red hair gleamed like fire, and his green eyes scanned the forest with a mix of curiosity and unease. A heavy axe rested in his hands, and at his belt hung a sword that had tasted many battles. This land, he said, his voice deep and steady, is unlike any we have known. It hides its face, yet it watches us. Beside him, his second-in-command, Haldor Stonehand, a grizzled warrior with streaks of white in his braided beard, spat into the dirt. Aye, it watches. The trees move when there's no wind, and the beasts don't fear us as they should. Thorvald's lips tightened. Keep the men sharp. This is a place where the gods test us. By the fourth day, the settlement's skeleton had taken shape. A palisade of freshly hewn logs surrounded a cluster of half-built longhouses, their roofs covered with thatch and moss. The Vikings had begun carving a place for themselves in this new world, but the forest loomed close, its shadows deep and impenetrable. It was just after dusk when the first alarm was sounded. A young lookout on the wall cried out, his voice shrill with fear. Movement in the trees! Skraeling. Thorvald was at the wall in moments, his axe in hand. The term skraeling, borrowed from earlier encounters, was used for anything foreign or strange, but what he saw among the trees was unlike any enemy he'd faced. Figures moved with unnatural grace, their forms blending into the forest like shadows come to life. They were tall, their skin the colour of weathered bark, and their hair glinted like strands of silver or golden moss in the moonlight. They carried bows of polished wood and spears tipped with gleaming stone. One stepped forward, their leader. She was slender but commanding, her presence radiating authority. Her hair was a cascade of pale gold, woven with feathers and beads, and her eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the twilight. She raised a hand, speaking in a voice that was clear and musical, though the words were incomprehensible. Thorvald raised his hand in return, the universal gesture for peace. "I am Thorvald Eriksson," he said, his voice calm but firm, "leader of this settlement. We mean no harm." The elven figure tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Behind her, the other Skraelings watched silently, their weapons held but not raised. Haldor stepped to Thorvald's side, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Do you think they understand us?" "They understand strength," Thorvald replied, "and they understand hesitation. Hold the line." For a moment, the clearing was silent but charged with tension, like the stillness before a storm. Then, one of the younger Vikings, eager to prove his mettle, hurled a spear. It flew past the Skraeling leader, striking a tree behind her. The response was immediate. The Skraelings moved with blinding speed. Arrows loosed from their bows in a deadly volley. The Vikings raised their shields just in time, the shafts thudding into wood and scattering sparks from steel. Thorvald roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Form the shield wall. Hold your ground." The Vikings snapped into formation, their shields overlapping in a solid wall of defence. The Skraelings pressed the attack, their spears darting like striking serpents. Thorvald stepped forward, his axe cutting through a thrusting spear, the wooden shaft splintering beneath his strength. "They're faster than any foe I've faced," Haldor grunted, driving his sword into the ground to block another strike. "And clever." "But they bleed," Thorvald said, his axe finding its mark. One of the Skraelings fell, blood dark against the forest floor. The clash was fierce but brief. The Skraelings, seeing the Vikings' discipline and resolve, retreated to the edge of the forest. Their leader raised her hand, and the attackers melted into the shadows, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves in their wake. Thorvald lowered his axe, his chest heaving. The Vikings held the line, battered but unbroken. The Skraeling leader emerged again from the shadows, her gaze meeting Thorvald's. This time, her hand was empty. "She wants to talk," Thorvald said, motioning for the men to lower their weapons. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, until he stood a few paces from the Skraeling leader. A tense exchange followed, facilitated by Aldric the Wise, the settlement's healer, who had some knowledge of strange tongues. The Skraeling leader spoke of the land as sacred, its trees and streams bound to their spirits. The Vikings' felling of the forest had angered those spirits, and the Skraelings had come to defend what was theirs. Thorvald listened carefully, his expression grave. "Tell her we mean no disrespect," he said to Aldric. "We will take what we need to survive, but we will honour their boundaries." Aldric relayed the message, and the Skraeling leader considered his words. After a long moment, she extended her hand, palm upward, a gesture of truce. Thorvald met her hand with his own, her cool touch both alien and strangely familiar. The truce was uneasy but held. The Vikings learned to tread carefully, avoiding the deeper parts of the forest and leaving offerings of fish and mead at the Skraelings' sacred sites. In return, the Skraelings allowed the settlement to grow, even guiding the Vikings to hunting grounds and teaching them to navigate the strange flora of the land. Thorvald named the settlement Jorvik, after the great city of York in their homeland. The palisade grew stronger, the longhouses were completed, and the settlers found a rhythm in this wild land. But the forest always watched, its secrets guarded by the Skraelings. On quiet nights, Thorvald would stand at the edge of the settlement, gazing into the trees. He often saw the faint glow of eyes watching back, but he never felt fear. "Do you trust them?" Haldor asked him one night, Thorvald's lips curled in a faint smile. "No, but I respect them, and that will have to be enough." And thus the fragile peace held, and the first stones of Jorvik were laid, a settlement born of conflict, compromise, and the unyielding will of its people.
Thank you for listening to Tales of Veldrith, Book 1, The Sentinel. For Kindle and paperback editions, visit mattytaylor.com.